sit in. The pot is huge. And it takes about 2 weeks, but I'll end up with about 200 to 300 doses of Wachuma. And then I offer ceremonies around Cusco. I don't consider myself a shaman, but I would consider myself a Wachumero, which is someone that works with Wachuma. That's, just as simple as can be. But, we obviously, we're working with psychoactive plant medicines. And so there is certainly elements of shamanism and ceremony in there. But I don't call myself a shaman because of all the it's a loaded term and carries a lot of baggage and stuff. So I just avoid that term. But Wachumero, which is something not as many people are familiar with.
It sounds cooler too.
Yeah, it does sound cooler. I think is a much better term. So yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific experience. Oh, well, I have one good one. It's not necessarily mine, but my friend Tomas. So Tomas took Wachuma with me, and before the ceremony, I always ask people, do you want a light, a medium, or a strong dose? And he had done it with me a couple times before. So the first time, I decide. I usually give them a really light dose. In my opinion, you want to use the lowest effective dosage, especially in the first ceremony that they're doing, especially if they've never done it before. But anytime it's the first time they do it with me, I still ask them the question, light, medium, strong, but I decide how much they're going to get that first time because we want to be safe. I always say in this ceremony, I have 3 priorities. Number 1, the most important, keeping people safe. Number 2 would be healing and revelations, learning. And then number 3 would be having fun. But number 1 is always safety. And so using the lowest effective dose that is going to have a positive effect for the person. Obviously, they need to be able to feel it and have an experience. But that first time, it's good to just dip your toe into the water. There's no need to dive headfirst into it. You can always do it again. Anyway, Tomas had done it a number of times. And he's like, I want a strong dose. I think this is his 5th or 6th time he had done it with me. And I was like, all right, no problem. Because he had good experiences all the other times. So I gave him a big dose, basically a full coffee mug, which with the Wachuma I make is a really good dose. Full coffee mug, almost spilling over the top. So he drinks it. We go up to this cave system. It's not a scary cave. The cave is like 40 foot tall, so it's not a creepy cave. It's really wide open. And we're going to the cave, and he's starting to get like a little nervous, kind of. And he said he could see on the cave walls like depictions of the Spanish and the Incas fighting each other. So we actually go through the cave. We wade through a river. It's only about ankle deep, a little more than ankle deep maybe. And everyone gathers in the cave. It tightens down at this one point. I do a cleansing ceremony with a rattle, shake the rattle, mapacho smoke, tobacco smoke, and I do a cleansing of the person, and then they walk through individually, one by one, from the darkness of the cave into the light on the other side. And that's sort of my ceremony thing. Well, anyway, so Tomas was everyone else has gone through. Tomas was the last one in there with me, and he was seeing these visions of the Incas being ran down by Spanish on horses with lances and being killed. Oh, I forgot to mention, Tomas's mother is from Spain, and his dad is Peruvian, I think. So, and Tomas is wearing a cross. So he's looking at the walls and all this stuff. He closes his eyes and I do the cleansing. And when I'm done, all of a sudden he grabs his cross and he said it burned his hand. And then he took it off, and I think he threw it on the ground. He might have got it later, but he got rid of it for that moment. And then he went through the cave. He was also seeing ghosts and all sorts of stuff in the cave. He went through the cave by himself and left behind all the things that he did not need, and left behind the past actions of his ancestors that were a burden on him that he didn't even know he had. So for Tomas, that was a weight off of his shoulders. So that's one Wachuma story there for
A
you.
profound experience to have. I'm curious, Scott. That sounds to me kind of like the Balcón del Diablo or the Temple of the
Yep,
Rainbow. Is that
that's where
where
it
you're at?
is.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
As soon as you started talking about the walk, because when I first went there, I had first heard about it through Brian Forrester. Again, I was watching his videos and he was there.
Yep.
And so I went to it and I was blown away. What it is, ladies and gentlemen, is it's actually almost a natural bridge over this river. And there's like a cave up on top, and then you can walk down into the larger cavern on the bottom where the river flows through. And
Yep.
it makes like a little, well, there's almost a door at the end. And that's what Scott's talking about, where you can walk through that door. And that's kind of the transition. It's a very, very sacred place. There's a Inca wall there, and if you follow that river up, there's actually significant ruins. There's also some baños, I think Venusto or something like that, some princess baths or something like that, and some other art. So I highly recommend people check out that area of Cusco. I also recommend that you don't go there alone, because there are things that are known to have happened there to people who travel, especially tourists and gringos who are going there by themselves, and especially if you're on psychedelic drugs.
Right. You want to go with a group. Absolutely. Yeah. Usually when we're doing it, it's a group of at least 8, sometimes 10, 12 people.
Awesome, Scott.
Yeah.
Well, for time's sake, man, can we please take a quick break and then we'll dive into Pusharo?
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
All right, so Scott has done extensive work, not only with plant medicines in this region, but also with archaeological sites and in petroglyphs. Scott, can you talk to us about the petroglyphs of Pusharo?
Sure. So, well, I'll say a general petroglyphs are rock carvings in rock. Let's see, there's a difference between, maybe help me with this if you know, I suppose there's rock painting, but petroglyphs are actually carved into the rocks.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. I find petroglyphs a bit more interesting because they're harder to make, and they usually last longer, and they may be older. So there are many different petroglyph sites in Peru. There's some near Quillabamba. There are some in the Manu region, Pusharo and Hinchiori. There's another one near Yurimaguas. I can't remember the name of it right now. But anyway, there's many different interesting petroglyph sites in Peru. There's some petroglyphs and rock paintings at a place called Toro Muerto, the dead bull. That's probably the most famous one. I think it's out near Arequipa. But I find the most interesting ones. Oh, yeah. And near, is it Tipon?
Tipon?
Yep. There's up above Tipon. I believe it's Tipon. That's the one with all the square.
Correct. And the water.
Harrison. Yeah. It's Tipon. Up on the hill above Tipon, there's some petroglyphs. Also, that hill has a bunch of iron in it, and you can find these like magnetic rocks. And they say don't ever go up there during a lightning storm because it gets hit by lightning a lot.
Real quick about that site, if you follow up, there's an aqueduct. There's actually a canal channel aqueduct that will take you to another site above it called Pucara that was being excavated when I went there. But it's a fascinating hike, and that area is amazing.
That's supposed to be where the petroglyphs are. I have not been there. We tried to get up there one day, but it started getting dark and we had to turn around. But that is where some petroglyphs are. They're not extensive, but there's some of the swirl symbol, sort of just a circular swirl, and some other petroglyphs up above Tipon. So the two main sites that I have researched the most about and been most interested in are Hinchiori, which is near the town of Pilcopata in the valley of Cosnipata on the way towards Manu, the town of Manu and Manu National Park. That is the smaller of the two, of Hinchiori and Pusharo. Hinchiori is the smaller one, but it's about 3 or 4 boulders that are covered in these different carvings. They were made by the Harakambat people that have lived in that area for a very, very long time. And you get different interpretations of what they mean. The shaman Don Alberto says that their representation of sort of these 4 or 5 different like cosmic forces, like the wind, the water, the forest, the universe, or the sky. But you get different interpretations of what they may actually mean. Nobody, I don't think, definitively knows for sure. But at Hinchiori, we had there's 2 or 3 rocks that are well known with petroglyphs, and then I kept hearing rumors that there was another one just from local people. You would also get the opposite that would happen. People would say, "Oh no, there's only 3. There's only 3," and then I was thinking, well, why are these other people telling me there's another one? Anyway, so one day me and this farmer, he said, I think it's over there, and we hacked through the jungle together, and we came upon a boulder that looked like no one had seen it in who knows how long. There were certainly other people that knew about this. It's not like I discovered it or anything like that, but even if I had natives carved it long before that, but there were certainly people that knew about it, but it looked like no one had been there in quite some time, whether it was 2 or 3 years or a decade. It's hard to tell in the jungle because the jungle just grows back over things so quickly. So anyway, we hacked through the jungle. We cleared the area around it, being very careful not to touch anything important. And then you have to, in order to see them, you have to sort of get up on top of it. And it was covered in moss. And I sort of just rubbed the leaves and the moss away with my hand very gently. And underneath were all these petroglyphs. And it was the most amazing feeling to see something that maybe someone had not seen. Like I said, it might have been 2 years. It might have been 50 years. Who knows how long it had been since someone had seen it. But that was really interesting. And we documented that site pretty extensively, took GPS readings, video, photographs, some basic measurements. But yeah, that was really exciting to see that and to see something that perhaps had not been seen for quite some time.
Scott, how did you first hear about these petroglyphs? I've only just recently, probably in the past year or two, heard about petroglyphs in the Amazon and started to become familiar with the rock art that's there. It's quite fascinating and it's quite extensive. I mean, we're not only talking about Peru here, we're talking about Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil.
Well, I'll say real quick, one interesting thing about the petroglyphs is that it's one of the only things we have left of the ancient Amazonian culture, because most stuff rots and degrades in the jungle. So, especially sites like Pusharo, with this, the cuts are deeply incised in the rock. It shows a level of organization and sort of free time that if the ancient Amazonian people were these unsophisticated savages, again, air quotes, doing air quotes, well, how did they have free time to carve these giant artistic, projects if they were just living in huts and hunting all the time and lived in a very primitive society? I think that there's a lot of evidence. You can actually read an article that I wrote on Medium called I think it's Ancient Amazonia, the Sophisticated Savage.
Well, Scott, I mean, we're talking about people who created one of the most well-producing soils ever known to mankind, Tierra Preta, I believe it's called. And this is a fascinating story. It's this artificial soil, basically, that is all over Amazon now, but it was introduced by a group of people. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. So they actually learned how to enrich the soil and enrich it for the long term in the jungle, which typically has very poor soils. So they actually engineered the soil. They improved the soil. And something, remind me to talk about this in a minute, the just the gardeners of Eden concept. but we'll touch on a couple other things first.
I know, I'm
But yeah,
sorry, I'm getting you off course. I just
No,
want
it's
to
okay.
say these were not primitive, quote unquote, savages. These were
exactly.
very